What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA channel. And today's video is about the fake news surrounding Khamzat Chimaev that I continue to hear circulating amongst quote unquote MMA experts, MMA journalists, and I just continuously scratch my head as to how these false narratives continue to get perpetuated. And as a result, listening into MMA Joey's live stream earlier today, I felt the need to make a video talking about some of the major myths surrounding Khamzat Chimaev and dispelling them once and for all, hopefully. And if you guys disagree, make sure to leave a comment. Let me know why you disagree. But I think my arguments are pretty sound. And I will start by saying that Khamzat Chimaev is my favorite fighter in the UFC in the history of the sport of MMA, in fact. And so, yes, I'm not immune to bias. Please chime in if you do think I'm being unfairly biased. But I do think that regardless of my biases and regardless of the fact that he's my favorite, I think I'm right on these 4 points. So we're going to go through them step by step, starting with myth number one. Myth number one is that Khamzat Chimaev has no cardio. Okay. Now, first of all, what I'm going to do is we're going to go through his record. We're going to look at his recent finishes, and we're going to talk about his quote-unquote cardio issues. Now, we start off in the UFC. He smashes John Phillips in round 2, obviously with that submission, and that was like he received like 1 or 2 strikes. That was a super dominant victory. Same thing again, Reese McKee just totally swarmed him, destroyed him. So obviously it ended in round 1, but he had a insane pace that should be some signal of a granted first round, but okay, no indications of cardio. There are cardio issues or lack of cardio. Obviously, Gerald Meerschaert, he had that one punch KO early on, amazing cross. Li Jingling, another first round submission. Now we get to Gilbert Burns. This is the fight that blows my mind when people bring this up. Everybody's like, "Oh, Khamzat's really, really good," but I don't know. In that Gilbert Burns fight, he kind of looked pretty bad. Okay, remember this. Number one, he won. If Carlos Prates, just think about this as an example. Carlos Prates, ranked number 13, when he fought Ian Gary, and he almost won in the 5th round, do you think that if he won that fight, which is almost the same situation with Gilbert Burns versus Khamzat Chimaev, at that point, Khamzat was ranked 11th when he was fighting Gilbert Burns, ranked at number 2. Gilbert Burns was a killer at welterweight at that time, okay? You think that if Carlos Prates had won in that 5th and final round against Ian Gary when he was starting to get some momentum, do you think that people would have been like, "Yeah, that was a good victory, but I don't know. He was looking kind of bad against Ian Gary during a lot of it. I don't know if he's really that good." No, that would not have been the narrative. People would be like, "Oh my God, Carlos Prates is a killer. He's a legend. He's killing everybody, including Ian Gary. He's amazing." But yet somehow Khamzat Chimaev, ranked number 11th, comes in and fights the number 2 welterweight at the time, gets the victory. And now he's all of a sudden has bad cardio because he looked a little vulnerable in round 3, which on one judge's scorecard, by the way, he won. So if you guys are remembering this fight, or no, I'm sorry. On 2 of the judges, what am I saying? On 2, I'm thinking of the Kamaru Usman fight. On 2 of the judges' scorecards, I'm double checking this right now as we speak. I believe that Khamzat Chimaev won that 3rd round. But on 2 scorecards versus 1. I'm double checking as we speak right now. Yeah, 10-9, 10-9. Only one judge. No, what am I? Sorry. He won the 3rd round unanimously, 10-9, 10-9, 10-9 across all 3. It was the 2nd round that he lost and the 1st round that he won. So where this narrative about a lack of cardio comes from, I have no idea. And maybe it comes from this other fight, okay, which is the one I just mentioned, Khamzat Chimaev versus Kamaru Usman. Now, if we look at the judges' scorecards here in round 3, yes, Chimaev lost on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards, but he won on 1, number 1. Number 2, he had a relentless pace in round 1, got a 10-8 round. How often does that happen? So obviously he burned a ton of fuel. Now, if you also listen to him after the fact, he said that he was sick going into that fight. So his plan was from the get-go to try and get the finish in round 1. And when that didn't happen, he knew he was in trouble. Yet he still continued to fight on. He looked great in round 3. He even got a takedown and had a bunch of ground control in round 3. On top of that, these were not 5-round fights. You budget your cardio according to the length and duration of the fight. Now, if you're assuming that, hey, maybe he just can't control it and he's just splurging it all out there, and so 4 and 5, he's going to be done. Well, I don't think that's a very intelligent take. Could be. It's possible. I would imagine his coaching staff and his entire team is going to strategize better than that in a 5-round fight, but that's just my 2 cents. So now, if we go back and watch this fight, go back and watch Kamaru Usman, go back and watch Gilbert Burns. Those are the only fights that went the distance on in his entire record in the UFC. But watch those fights again, and you're going to be surprised. So when people say, "Well, I don't know if it goes to round 4 and 5, it's or 3, 4, and 5, it's all DDP, and Khamzat's only shots is in round 1 and 2." I really beg to differ, and go back and check these fights if you want verification yourself. But anyways, coming back to his record again, those are the 2 fights. He won on one of the judges' scorecards in round 3, and he secured a takedown against Kamaru Usman, who prior to that basically had a near perfect record in terms of takedown defense. So these are things that he's doing supposedly when he's winded, supposedly when he has no cardio. So let's check the facts. Let's be real about this. Fake news. It is a myth. I hope I've now dispelled it. Khamzat has no cardio. We shall see, but I think that is BS. All right, myth number 2. Khamzat is a pull-out merchant. I love this one. People are saying, "Oh man, Nasruddin Imavov is the backup fighter. That's got to be the best fight to be the backup fighter for. Oh my God, Khamzat, he's got a really high chance." Somebody made a joke. The only thing better would be if it was Khamzat versus Paulo Costa. Then we'd have a really good shot at him sliding in. And it's like, let's really look at the record. Let's really look at the pullouts. This whole narrative, again, people are just so biased against Khamzat Chimaev. Sorry, that was the wrong slide. People are so biased against Khamzat Chimaev. I don't understand why. Maybe because the expectations are so high. Maybe a lot of people just don't like. I don't really understand it. But it's like any little thing that happens, it just gets exaggerated tenfold. And now everybody's like, "Oh, yep, Khamzat's so unreliable." Let's really look back at this. So this is where it began, okay? John Phillips, Reese McKee, within 10 days. That was the quickest turnaround in the history of the UFC. Smashed both opponents. Say what you will about the level of the opponents, but within 10 days, smashing both of them the way that he did, absorbing like 2 significant strikes in both of those fights, total combined, was insane. Then Gerald Meerschaert, boom. Now we get the 3 quote-unquote pullouts. You remember Leon, I think, was responsible for one of those. Also, they scheduled it for December 19th when he had severe case of COVID. He did not recover by January 20th. So do we really call that another pullout? And he's like a pullout merchant. He just never recovered. He got so seriously ill that he was saying he was going to retire from the sport. And he nearly did. He was on death's doorstep. If you watch footage of him in the hotel room in a hotel lobby with his coaching staff, there's a video of this from a long time ago. It wasn't even about whether or not he was going to be able to fight. It was whether or not he was going to be able to live. So those were the rationales for these. So this is really one pullout, and he had no choice. He couldn't even have been allowed to fight because at that time the COVID restrictions were so tight. If you tested positive, you're out. So do we really call that a pullout? That was just he was disqualified from fighting. Drickus posted something like, "Oh, you pulled out of this fight." We know what happened there. He didn't pull out of Nate Diaz. He got removed from Nate Diaz, and you heard this. This is a little bit of a conspiracy theory, but the conspiracy is, again, he missed weight by 7 pounds. But if you listen to the subsequent interviews, it's like he was told to stop cutting weight. That's why he was so overweight. He's probably way closer than that. Maybe he even could have made that. A lot of people think that the UFC didn't want him fighting Nate Diaz because it would have been such a blowout that it would have been a bad look. And so they made the change ahead of time. They knew what was going to happen. This is a little conspiracy theory, okay? But so that's not a real pullout. They just swapped him, and they made him fight Kevin Holland instead, and we know what happened. He absolutely annihilated Kevin Holland. Say what you will about Kevin Holland. Nobody has done what Khamzat Chimaev did to Kevin Holland. So that was insane, and I think he does not get credit for that either. Surprise, surprise, doesn't get credit for anything. Then we come to Paulo Costa, right? We had that was posted by Drickus du Plessis. Hey, you pulled out of that fight. That was Paulo Costa that pulled out. He didn't pull out, and they had to sub Kamaru Usman in on short notice. Now we get to Robert Whittaker. Yes, he pulled out of that fight. He had a severe flu or severe sickness or something like that. So that was legitimate. Now, if you want to talk about what's happened since then, he talked about this in the buildup when they actually fought. He's been battling health issues since he had COVID back in the day. Okay. And what he did in between that time when he got really, really sick again is he had half of his thyroid removed. And now with half of it remaining, I believe I did a whole video on this. I don't think he has to take any drugs or anything to basically support the thyroid function, because if there's still half, it can still perform its function. On top of that, he's gone through a lot of other changes, training in the mountains of Russia, at least he was for that camp, so as to avoid some of the sicknesses that he believes were caused by the heat in the UAE where he now resides, things like that. So he's gone above and beyond to now make sure that these issues don't come up. But again, if you call him a pullout merchant, I mean, it's like these are major illnesses that he was dealing with. COVID, he had no choice. So you could really say one pullout where maybe you could say, hey, you could have fought through it or something like that. But according to Khamzat, and I believe him, I think he's a really honest guy. I believe that he was so sick and had such a problem at the time that he simply could not fight. He had to pull out, but then he came back and fought Robert Whittaker when he was ready to go. We all know what happened there. Round 1 finish. So that's it. Khamzat, a pullout merchant. These guys making jokes. Oh, that's the best fight to be a backup on, because there's a high probability that Khamzat's going to pull out again. I think that's fake news. All right. Myth number 3. Khamzat cannot get into the U.S. Well, do I need to say more? This has been propagated for a long time. Now, could it have maybe been a problem at some point prior to this new election and our new president now in office? Could this have maybe been a problem before? Yeah, maybe. But the thing that was annoying me is after the election, people were still saying, I don't know if he's going to be able to get in. It's like Dana White and Donald Trump are boys. Do you really think that Khamzat Chimaev, who I believe is going to be the new Conor McGregor, bigger than Conor McGregor, the new superstar of the UFC, do you think he's not going to be able to get into the U.S. to fight once Donald Trump is in office? I knew from the get-go, once it was January 11th or whatever inauguration day was, that this was no longer going to be an issue. But people kept propagating and perpetuating this rumor, and I just could not understand it. Again, the only way I can rationalize it is people, they just lose all logic and rationality when they talk about Khamzat Chimaev. So it is what it is. Okay. And myth number 4, this kind of goes back to him being a pullout merchant, that Khamzat Chimaev still has health issues. So as I mentioned again, he's gone above and beyond. He talked about this in that UFC kind of like pre-fight build-up video, that he's remedied his health issues with the thyroid surgery, changing up where he trains. He's got an entire team around him now. By the way, going back to the cardio issue, one other thing I want to remind you guys of is in this fight where he supposedly had such bad cardio that he won round 3, that was also a welterweight. So he's cutting way more weight back then as opposed to middleweight, where now he has to cut 15 less pounds. So if you want to say he has quote unquote cardio issues, I think that was a vestige of the past, stemming from the fact that he had that massive weight cut. Again, Kamaru Usman, I know I'm going back to the cardio issue. And again, Kamaru Usman, he's of his own admission said he was really sick going into that fight. That's why he tried to steamroll Kamaru Usman in round 1, still won round 3 on all judges' scorecards. So it is what it is. But anyways, coming back to this notion that he continues to have health issues, look, anything can happen at any time. But I think as of now, given the changes that he's made in his life, the team that he's got around him, the people that are supporting him, I think these are now all myths that we can cast aside, and let's see what happens. So let's clear all this nonsense out, and let's all have positive thoughts, positive vibes about Khamzat Chimaev, and let's be fair to the guy. Just because I think part of the reason why people are so on his case and just thinking anything and everything is a reason to cast doubt on him, just because he's so phenomenally talented, and people thought he could be champ in 2020, just when he busted onto the scene. Just because of that, let's not be unfair to him. Let's treat him like any other fighter, that if you go in at 11 and beat number 2 in a unanimous decision, that says something pretty good. Not that it says something bad about you. Like, that narrative blows my mind. That you go in and beat Robert Whittaker in round 1, where he is trying his hardest to scramble out for several minutes, can't get out from that swarm. It's never happened to him in the history of his time in the middleweight division. And then suddenly gets a submission. Let's not just take credit away from Khamzat just because his teeth were weakened, and so the face crank seemed to have taken effect a little bit more quickly. Let's not discredit Khamzat for that. I think that's a little bit ridiculous. On top of that, if you look at his training videos, he was training that face crank. I think he's got the strength, and he believes in his ability to actually finish a face crank, whereas most fighters can't do it. They got to get under the neck. They don't have the strength. So I think he pressed that face crank, believing that regardless of the issues within his teeth, he was going to get that submission. Anyways, I digress. My point is, be fair, be objective. And for all you guys who are massive DDP fans, remember, number 1, I'm a DDP fan. So I am not coming at this from a DDP hater perspective. In fact, in the middleweight division, DDP is probably my second favorite fighter in the middleweight division, the second favorite fighter that I want to see compete. It just so happens that he's going up against my favorite fighter of all time. And so it is what it is. I will be rooting for Khamzat. But anyways, let's be fair. Let's give him his credit. Just because you're a DDB fan doesn't mean you can't be fair to Khamzat as well. And let's just go in with positive vibes and let's see the greatest fight of 2025 unfold. Arguably one of the greatest fights in the history of the UFC, in my humble opinion. Feel free to disagree if you disagree. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you believe that I have busted these myths, that I'm a bona fide myth buster when it comes to Khamzat Chimaev? Let me know. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.